All right. Well, welcome. Woo. Good to
Woo, no kidding. Look at that, Pamela. People are just boing, 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 boing. I love it.
I call it popcorn, Zoom popcorn, because they just
It's
keep
so
popping
great.
in. It is fantastic. Just a note to everybody, the election meeting is still going on, so we are a little delayed. That's not how we roll at the Women's Council of Realtors. We want to be on time. Yet we had some really special stuff going on with our elections, and it just kept going. So thank you for your patience, and we're glad you're here. I have to say, Dia, I've been waiting for this all day. You are so much fun. For those of you who had the opportunity to meet Dia at Network 360, well, you know her energy, her enthusiasm, her passion. She's on fire. And for those of you who have never met Dia, well, I'm going to say what past President Joanne Stevens used to say, buckle up, because you're in for a ride. Dia's been featured in a lot of places. Forbes for her work helping women ask more and get more, and how to bounce back from failure. Her tools to help you take control of the stage have also been featured in Forbes and in Entrepreneur, two of my very favorite magazines. I love them. Her tips on negotiating were covered on CNBC Market and Career Advice for Women on U.S. News and World News Wealth of Knowledge podcast. And her interview made the best of episode roundup in 2020. She has been featured in Fast Company on gender equality in the workplace and Hello Giggles and Yahoo News on how to get breadcrumbs to death. I love breadcrumbs, but they're a little fat.
Yeah, we can talk about how not to get breadcrumbed, because it's a thing. We can talk about what that is. Yeah, great.
Quite a resume, Dia. And so it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Let's talk.
I am so happy to be here with you all. I am just thrilled to be with, I think of Women's Council of Realtors as a group of, business women, but also entrepreneurs, because all of you are out there are building something for yourselves and for your communities and for the other folks that you collaborate with. So, as I talk to you today as a community, and to you, Pamela, I'm thinking of all of you as business women and entrepreneurs in your own right.
Well, that's exactly what we are. We are successful realtors advancing women as business leaders in the industry and the communities we serve. So you hit it right on, Dia. So we have you back. Since we last talked, you launched a project aimed at helping women ask for more and get it. What do you mean by that? And how's it work?
Well, yeah. So actually, before we met, that project was launched, but I've recently launched a podcast to help grow the impact of that project. And that project is, in fact, just that. It's a project called Project Ask Like an Auctioneer. And it takes everything I learned from my impact hobby, which I picked up in my 40s, of doing fundraising, auctioneering for women-led nonprofits that benefit women and girls here in the Bay Area. And after doing, 10 or 12 moments on stage where I'm having a rapid fire negotiation with an audience who is there to support the cause that I'm there to raise money for, but who also don't know me and I have to get into quick relationship with and make an ask on behalf of that organization, I realized that, oh my gosh, so much of the mental models and tools from the world of auctioneering is very useful for how we think about how to ask for or shape strategic asks in our careers and businesses. I've been a leadership communications coach for nearly 2 decades, helping folks in the corporate world, in entrepreneurship, social impact, and global sport have the courage to really speak from the heart at the most critical communications moments in their careers and businesses, whether it's a $1 billion Olympic campaign bid, or if we're looking at fundraising, or we're talking about, talking at an all hands to establish your own leadership in a corporate, context. There are critical communications moments, and they always start with an ask. That, identifying what is it that I'm doing in front of this audience always starts with, what am I asking for? What is the need here that makes this communication moment really important? And we call that in business, a call to action. But really what it is an ask, and getting clear about what that is. And when I saw these two worlds crashing together, my world of, my 20 years as a communications catalyst and coach for leaders, coming together with my impact hobby of helping an organization ask for more, I was like, oh, this is a thing. And so, yes, I'm here to help women ask for more and get it and use it. And importantly, Pamela, using asking as a success strategy in our careers, because I really believe, and I know I'm giving you a very long answer, I really, in my 20 years of doing the work that I've been doing around leadership development and communications, I've seen that, and now I posit that asking is one of the most overlooked and sometimes actively avoided success strategies, out there for us. And I know many of your council members are, going in to make asks all the time on behalf of their clients, potentially, or negotiating on behalf of your clients. But there's so many other places where we can use asking as a success strategy on our own behalves to help us reach our goals faster. And they're not always tied to the traditional, what you think of as a negotiation table around only dollars and cents.
Well, and what gets me is last time we talked, you talked about ask like an auctioneer, and the way you talk like an auctioneer because you can just rattle things off before anyone can say anything. And that's what's so fabulous. Now, talk a little bit about some of those strategies of the 4 asks, because I think in Women's Council of Realtors, we have the saying that is the task is to ask. And we know the power of the ask, because what can they say? I mean, no. And then we ask again in another way. So tell us what those 4 strategies are.
So when I launched Project Ask Like an Auctioneer and started teaching workshops, doing keynotes, hosting coaching circles, as I was learning about the kinds of asks that women do make, the kinds of asks that we can make in our careers, I just started to notice that the kinds of asks that I've hundreds of conversations with women, the asks that they make, that we make, kind of fall in these 4 buckets, I notice. And I've talked to women who are running for office for the first time, whether it's a federal office or, a county role, or even in their city council. We're not talking to women who are entrepreneurs across many industries, women who are advancing their careers in corporate, like you name the context. Okay. It really hit me about a year into doing this work that the 4 categories I see all of these asks really fall into are, yes, money. And sure, that can be, about salary, that can be about commission rates, that could be about fundraising for your startup, that can be about contributions for a nonprofit that you're running. I'm sure there are women in the council who are on the board or have founded their own nonprofits. That's showing up a lot, especially I notice for women in the middle of their careers, whether women are asking for, bonus and comp packages, that they're looking for increased benefit, like a million things that have to do with money. In the case of somebody running for an office, they're making asks that are tied to contributions for their campaigns. The second pillar that I noticed that the things that we can ask for, and they don't, in the asks, they don't sound like this until you kind of pull the lens back and look, which is influence. And this is like what, and all of these 4 that I'm, 1.5 of the way through all 4 are tied to this question of like, yes, I want to use asking as a success strategy, but what do I actually ask for? What are the things out there that I could ask for? So if folks are listening, they can be thinking about, are there asks that might fall into one of these 4 categories that would help them reach their goals, faster? So the second one is influence. And that is about access to a network that helps you have more influence. The kind of influence you need to reach your goals. That could be about stepping onto stages that are influential. Maybe there are women right now in your community who are, looking to be in front of audiences more often. The question is, which ones help you be more influential and that can actually launch you toward your goals? Influence can be about mentorship, getting the mentoring that really matters to you as you're growing your business, as you're growing your practice, as you're growing into the vision that you have for yourself. So influence is a really key piece there. And in some cases, for folks who work in a corporate environment, this can sometimes be about creating alliances and mentorship with other allies inside the organization that could be champions for your ideas, for your work, right? To help you extend the impact of what you're doing beyond your own sphere of influence. And then the third one is around authority. And sometimes authority is, it's very easy to think, oh, if I need more authority in one place to get to my goals, sometimes that comes in the form of a title or a promotion. But sometimes that can come in the form of making asks that help you own a particular decision in your organization. Maybe there's a project or an initiative that it doesn't take a promotion or a new title to raise your hand and say, I want to own that. And I want to have decision-making power over that thing. And in some cases, it might be, moving out and going out on your own where you have authorship over your day. Many realtors and folks in finance and others, I'm sure in your counsel and lending, they're working on their own terms, right? They're the authors of their day. They're making decisions, they're authoring their next step. So many of them come in the form of authority. And the last one I notice a lot, I'm curious if this is resonant for folks in the council, is like balance. And I don't just think about asks we make that bring work-life balance to our lives. Sure, that's an aspiration we all want to have. I notice more it's about making the asks that bring into balance who we are and what we want for ourselves, how we want to work, where we want to have impact, and our external context. So, some really simple examples are, a woman came through this content who had grown up in an organization doing sales, and she was in the revenue part of the business and was really had a craving, to feed herself creatively, and wanted to move into design. Like, she wanted the next chapter of her life and her career to be about working in design in the creative space. And she assumed that her organization didn't have room for that. She crafted a really strategic ask, and she made the ask to try to pursue that career in-house at the organization she was in, and was able to make that transition. So she brought more balance into what her life looked like and who she really was, So we're not living somebody else's reality. So I find these 4 buckets are the places where we can look around and think, okay, if I have a goal X, which one of these areas, if I made an ask in them, would give me what I need to help me reach that goal?
It's not always easy to ask. And so some of us are better at it than others. And why do you think that's so? I mean, what holds us back from really living our dreams and asking the big questions and going after and finding that balance? I mean, being part of the Women's Council does have an influence, okay? It does build credibility. But what stops us from asking? I mean, that's my biggest issue.
It's beautiful that you recognize that question. And there are studies. In fact, we'll have a podcast at the Bondi show coming out in 4 more episodes where we address this. And I'll cite 2 studies. There are a few studies, one through HBR and one through, I think, University of Colorado, that show that backlash is real for women. Mm-hmm. And whether you are as an entrepreneur or whether you're, in-house somewhere, there is backlash is a thing. And studies have shown that. Those studies, I'm curious if the next phase of them are going to change that. But I think that's one of the things that women are nervous about. And, we have reason to be. The other thing that I notice women are worried about, and that makes them say, oh, if I want to ask for this, but maybe I should ask for this. Like, it's not always just whether we ask or don't ask. Sometimes it's, are we intentionally and preemptively carving down our asks to make them small enough so they don't make anybody uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
So there is a little bit of a strain there for women around prioritizing their own, like an ask feels like a packaged up prioritizing of my own need. And that can be antithetical to a lot of the sort of gendered expectations that other folks' needs should come first. So that's one thing I notice comes up a lot in the conversations that I have in my workshops and on the podcast and in my keynotes. The third thing is the worry, the concern that if we stand up for a big ask, that will be perceived in a way that is not accurate to who we are. That will be perceived as, pushy or as greedy or as blah, 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 blah. But one of and I have strategies I love to share to help mitigate some of that so that we can find the courage we need to go ahead and advocate for ourselves.
And, I think the pandemic has taught us a lot about ourselves because we really had to dig deep and fight for our sanity. And it's been, sometimes it's made us uncomfortable. And I think what the pandemic has taught me the most is like, it's okay. Get uncomfortable. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where you see the real growth in yourself.
I have a name for that. Yes.
What is it a good name or no? Uh-oh, we just lost you, or did you lose me? Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
We
Okay.
can hear you.
I can hear you.
I
Okay.
hear you.
We just, I think, lost Dia. And so just hold tight. You know, at the last meeting, I said stand at ease. And that's like one of my favorite things now. It's like, just chill out for a minute. We'll be back. But, you know, I think with the pandemic, and what I was going to say to Dia is it has taught us that we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it's okay. It's okay. Because that's where we really make some real big strides in our lives. And I remember listening to John Maxwell speak one time, and he said that his grandchildren, every time he would meet with them for holiday, he would come up with a fun thing to do. And one time he gave them all rubber bands. He said he had four or five grandchildren, and they were probably just little people. And he gave them each a rubber band. And he said, I want you to take this rubber band, and over the next few days, I want you to come back and let me know the lessons you've learned from this rubber band. He said, so a couple days went by, and he noticed one of his granddaughters, she was like 4 or 5, she had 2 rubber bands. And he said, Mia, why do you have 2 rubber bands? And she said, well, I just thought maybe I need to stretch a little harder than everybody else.
That's funny.
But, you know, what a great lesson that is for all of us to learn, is that we have to stretch. And that's the only way we get better. And so Dia is the number one person. And you know, she shared with us at Network 360, which is our leadership training last year. And this is where we met her. And I just fell in love with her because she's totally amazing. She shared that she was one of the only women in the auctioneer school. Women just don't, you know, I don't know if anyone remembers being part of that, but women just don't become auctioneers. And so she had to fight that gender imbalance and fight for her right to be an auctioneer because they're not pushy enough. You know, they don't know how to push. So and it's interesting to me. And I mean, this is not my talk show. Of course, this is like therapy. I don't know, but it's interesting. Oh, there she is.
I am. I'm back. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I'm here.
I'm just babbling on and on. So we were just talking about your balance, you're going into being an auctioneer, and how great that is about being uncomfortable and stretching ourselves.
Yeah. Where I got kicked out. Sorry, everyone. Thanks for your patience and for staying on for me. This idea of exactly that discomfort zone, you know, everyone says, get out of your comfort zone, get out of your comfort zone. And I just want to say that, like, if we're not in our comfort zone, then where are we? And I love to say that we're in the zone of freaking out, and that the feeling of, oh my gosh, could I possibly ask for that? Or, oh my gosh, could I possibly approach that influential voice? Or, oh my gosh, could I possibly submit an article to that influential magazine? Or, oh my God, if it has an, oh my gosh, and it lives in some place that feels like a zone of freaking out, that is a positive sign that you are doing something courageous. And the place that is the zone of freaking out is also the place of potential. It's the zone of potential. So when I think about and counsel women on making asks that really matter, I will always ask, is it big enough to make you freak out a little bit? And if it is, that's a sign you're doing something courageous and you're challenging your assumptions about what's possible. And that's where some amazing level up and some gold can be had in the world of asking for more and getting it.
And so what are some of the things that women can do to start asking for more? I mean, what can we do to make that happen?
Well, the first thing we can do is look around and think first about, what are my goals? What's one concrete midterm goal that I have right now in my career? Buy my own commercial building. Be known as fill in the blank, publish a book, hit a revenue goal, something concrete that feels real, that you know that you'd hit if you were going to get there. And that if you got there, you could point to it and go, yep, I've done it. The second thing to do to start asking for more is to say, okay, if that's my goal, what's the very next move I need to make that will help me get closer to that goal? For me, for example, and I think maybe I brought this up before, I do want to write and publish the book, Ask Like an Auctioneer, How Women Can More Courageously Ask for More and Get It. What's my next big move? My next big move is to get a literary agent. Okay. So for you, you might be thinking, what's my next big move? And then ask yourself, what asks could I make that are big and juicy that help me action that move that gets me to that goal? And then you could notice, is it something that brings me more into balance? Is it something that falls in the world? Is having more influence, and in what way going to help me move closer to my goals? Is this a moment of taking some authority that will help establish my reputation, expertise, authority in a space so that I can position myself to get closer to my goal? Is it purely financial? And if it's something else, great. So that's sort of the formula to start thinking about, both asking for more and getting it, but also thinking of asking as a success strategy. What's my goal? What's my next big move? And then what asks might I make to help action that big move? And here's the key: is the ask I've identified big and in the zone of freaking out, or am I artificially lowballing myself?
Yes. And you know what? I love the way you did what can we do? And then you put them in those buckets. You kind of put them together so that you can put together your goals. And I know a goal is like a dream. And I was talking to somebody one time and they said, well, goals are not that great. You need milestones, because once you reach a goal, what do you do? So how do you feel about that one? Because somebody said that to me. I'm like, well, I got a goal. And she's like, oh, no, goals are out. You need milestones.
Well, I think of it as like similar, but I think it's sort of in the world of asking. For me, it's like four. It's like, what's your BHAG, which is your horizon goal, your big, hairy, audacious goal. Okay. I want to reach 1 million women. I want 1 million women asking for more and getting it, because inside of that, my mission is to put more money and decision-making power in the hands of women so we can change everything for all of us. That's my BHAG. How will I know when I get it? I have no idea. I mean, I guess if I write and publish and sell 1 million copies of the book, that would be a good way to know. And then inside of that, there are concrete goals that the sum of which, indicates my BHAG, right? And then inside of that, my big moves, I think of those as milestones, right? Sure. I think I do anyhow. So I think it is like big horizon stuff, and understanding completely that the horizon is always moving away from us, right?
Mhm.
Because we hit something and there's always there's another horizon. As we walk toward it, it moves away from us. So I think of, yes, milestones are important. And then it's just, to me, that's just project. Like, what are the project? How do milestones belong in a project? And if your project is to hit a goal, fine, think about it that way.
And you know what? You're so right. It just keeps, once you get to one point, you go to another point. It just keeps building on one another. And just like your career, when I think about you as a professional woman, and I look across this room at all these different women and men that are part of our organization, they all come from different backgrounds, and that's what they bring. So why not add on to that? And when you talk about asking and you talk about negotiating, is it the same thing? Like if you're going to, as realtors, we go in there and we're always commission, and they always want to cut our commissions and all that kind of stuff. And we always have to look for the reason why they shouldn't. So, when we think about that, what would you say?
Well, I think about asking and negotiating kind of separately. They're two separate beats, right? Like, I mean, when you go in to make an initial ask, that in and of itself is, I'm sure when realtors are representing a buyer, you're sitting at the table going, what's our first ask? Like, that is a conversation, which is different than, and then after, what happens after that, it becomes the negotiation. That's how I think of it, because I really want to help the women with that first moment where we're not, again, preemptively lowballing ourselves. We're not shrinking our asks and crippling our ability to resource our dreams because we've gone in too low in that first moment. So I think of them sort of separately. Like, there's the ask and then the negotiation. They're related. I'm not saying they're not related, but let's treat them as sort of two halves of the same coin, that ask being that first really important put. Now, when you're talking about, why someone shouldn't cut your commission or negotiate you down, what I think about that is, that makes me want to go back to the idea of connecting what you're doing to the need and the agenda of the person across the table from you. And I learned this really clearly in auctioneering. I have a little framework around it called I see you, you see me, here's my ask, which is to say, I know what you're trying to do. And I know what matters to you. I know what your values are. I understand your vision for yourself and your business, what, et cetera. Let me help you see me. And you're going to talk about how those two things are aligned so that the ask that you're making helps the person across the table get closer to what they want. Even if they have to say yes to something that feels like a stretch to them right now, saying yes to you, not yes, meaning I will not cut your commission. How does it help? How does them keeping you engaged at a rewarding rate help them reach their goals? So I see you, you see me. I do that in auctioneering. The first thing I do is step on stage and say, welcome everyone. I see why you're here. You're here to support this organization because it matters to you, because this is a place where you can live in alignment with your values. This is the place where you can create an action that matters to you. This means that you get to have the impact that you want to have in the world. Let me tell you about me. My name is, and here's why I'm here. And here's what's important to me. Look at, we are the same. And you giving tonight means that you're able to live in a way that is alignment with who you are. And I'm here to help you do that. So I see you, you see me is a great framework to think about helping people not be afraid of saying yes to you.
Well, you know what? I love that, because as a organization that's full of volunteers, and we're always trying to, put on some events and a lot of fundraising we do. And that's part of that, it's like the ask.
That's right. That's right.
And get it. And I love that I see you, you see me, because then you get on the same page.
Yes. And you let the person because it's easy to think of asking and negotiation as an extractive activity. I'm extracting something from you. And that may not be true at all. Even the world of, of fundraising, we are helping people and organizations actualize their values.
Well, and you know what? That's what I love about you, because you have so much energy, and you recently launched a podcast, or you have a podcast. We have a podcast as well at the Women's Council. And so I would love to have the opportunity to interview you for our podcast.
Love that.
Tell us why you decided to do that as well.
Well, so my business model is really B2B2C. So I bring workshops and professional development opportunities to organizations, women's associations, but also large, I'm here in the Bay Area. I do a lot of professional development in the world of tech and that I'm looking at a batch of 200 folks at a time every time that I'm going out to an audience, giving a workshop, doing a keynote, et cetera. And the podcast is a place where I can have more impact and widen my reach, strengthen my reach. Number one. Okay. Number two, we, and we're only 10 episodes, and 10th episode will be coming out pretty soon. The strategy for the podcast is part expert perspective. So we'll have folks on the show who can help you with strategies to help you reach your goals faster. But also part basically Q&A and live coaching. And that is because folks have told me that in my workshop, Your Most Powerful Ask Live, the most important, impactful section of that workshop is when I ask for volunteers to come to the front of the room, virtually or otherwise, to do to get coaching on an upcoming goal they have, and how to craft a strategic, powerful, aligned ask that is in integrity with who they are, where they're going, and the community that they engage with. And that you could never step to the front of the room to do that with me. But if you're in the back of the room watching, you get a huge amount of value out of that. So the podcast is shaped so that people can call in with questions around what's going on in their own career and the asks that they have. And we will workshop them on the show. We will launch premium content later where we will actually record live coaching sessions with me so that you can listen in and learn from them. So we've launched the podcast to make that more real and more ready for women all over the world.
And so you just started, and you have your 10th one. So what have you learned from doing a podcast, and how has that helped you in your career?
what I've learned is that I am not as good a podcaster as I am someone on stage. Let me tell you, it's a whole separate craft in and of itself. Thankfully, I have a great producer who can fix nearly everything in post-production. So that's one thing I've learned. I think the other thing I've learned is that, I think, well, a lot of it is kind of production-y, so it's not too sexy. But the other thing is that, people want to be in conversation around a lot of really important, like people want to talk about these big important topics. And we inviting folks, even guests, into the conversation has been wildly satisfying. And I think there is room right now for us to be thinking not about how do women twist themselves into a knot to please the world so they can get what they want, instead to say, how do we actually stand in our power? Yes, avoid backlash where we can, but also how do we move toward what we want in a way that is in integrity with who we are, and we don't have to hide in ways that that sort of carve out our most powerful selves to stay safe. We can both be powerful and get what we want without repelling the world. So the thing that I've really learned is like this, a podcast is a beautiful and intimate space where we can have these more powerful conversations that often, when we're like, you got 20 minutes on stage and you don't get to be intimate with folks, you can't do in that same way.
So you're saying that you feel the podcast is a little more intimate, or what?
Yes.
Really? Very interesting. I wouldn't think of that, because here we are in a virtual world, and we are a relationship-based business, not business, I should say, organization. And it's been hard for us to transition. We're doing much better at it, but
Sure.
What is the difference, and how can we do the same kind of ask in a virtual world compared to an online world?
Well, that's a great question. So do you mean individually or as a community?
I'm thinking individually, because here we are, some of us are even doing a listing appointments virtually.
Yes.
So how do you take that ask and mold it into a virtual climate? And that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. So I would say right off the bat, this is going to sound a little woo-woo, but I'm in California. So here we are, like heart connection is everything right now.
So the connection, you mean like connecting?
Heart connection. And even before you get on the call, like I have since about halfway through the pandemic, I started calling people, literally, without a warning. Hi, it's Dia. Yeah, I just wanted to call and check on you. Like literally calling people in a way that was like when we were kids and we had a twirly cord to the kitchen phone where you didn't text your friends to ask them if it was okay if you called them. I called a former colleague of mine just out of the blue one day, and she picked up the phone and she was like choked up that I just called her.
Something wrong with you? Is there something wrong?
Yeah, I was like, nothing's wrong, Mary Ellen. I'm just calling to be like, hey, I've been seeing you post some stuff on LinkedIn. It looks like there's changes. Like, I just wanted to say, hey, girl, hey. And that has been, interestingly, a very powerful tool for that heart connection. Like we are such in production mode. So where, I would say, in a virtual space, can you create heart connection as a platform for the business conversation you're about to have? So when we think about the asks, it's not just jump on a call and make the ask. It's about, where do I establish that heart connection that allows me to stand on a more powerful platform when I go to make the asks that matter to both the people that I'm making the ask of and to me and my goals.
Yeah, that's fabulous, because I think that's been a big part of what we're doing right now. And so I wanted to know, like, how can people in our community do more with you? So how do we get connected with you, Dia?
Well, the number one thing folks can do is to, I think I placed it in the chat. I can put it in again. The best thing for anyone to do is to subscribe to the podcast. You can go to Apple Podcasts. You can go to Google Podcasts. It's on platforms I didn't even mean for it to be on platforms, just so you can find the Dia Bondi Show. It's a big podcast for women with goals, but these are not gender specific strategies. Look, if you are interested in having a conversation about about tools and strategies to help you get where you want to go, and try to have a good time while you're doing it, you can come on to the Dia Bondi show. You can also always send us an email and a question, and we will workshop it on the show. And if you let us know who you are and how to get a hold of you, we will let you know when your question is live on the show. That's another thing. If you're on our mailing list, we'll be doing some other opportunities for folks to join coaching circles and live podcast recordings. And so that's another way you can engage with us as we continue to grow this podcast and its impact.
Oops, sorry about that. Making a little noise over here.
Oh, I gotcha.
And so we're almost going to be done, and you have some more time. What do you want to leave us with? I mean, give us some good juicy tidbits on successfully asking the ask. Give us some tidbits.
So I would say one of the important things to do as we think about making courageous asks in our careers, ones that do in fact threaten a no, okay, is for us to fall in love with our goals more than we hate rejection.
Mm-hmm.
So actively fall in love with your goals. Imagine they are the goals of someone you love. And stand up for them in a way you would stand up for your own children's goals, for the goals of the people that you love in your life, and to fall in love with your goals more than we fear the rejection that we might face on the way to getting them may help you stand up for the bigger version of the thing that you need in order to resource those goals. I think that's big. That's the big one for me.
That is super big. I mean, I think that we never feel like we're worthy enough to push enough for ourselves. And really, when you think about it, fall in love with your goals more than you do the rejection. Woo! That's big stuff.
What I love about that, and what I find that it just can give you a little bit of space enough so you're not just thinking about you getting something for yourself, but you're advocating for this goal that has a life and a desire of its own. So yeah, if that helps anyone in this room right now stand up for something that they're meaning to ask for and just haven't quite done it yet, or stand up for a strategic ask that is not on the menu right now, but you want to order something off the menu, then I hope that helps push you right over the edge.
Well, I have to say that, asking for more, getting more is so valuable to all of us, because we are in business, and we are, we always, we don't want to push ourselves too much. Like you said, we just want to ride that fine line. And so now what we found out is you got to get outside of that area, get in the zone. What did you call it?
The zone of freaking out.
Oh my God.
The zone of freaking out, or I like to call the ZOFO. Yes.
ZOFO. I love it. That's going to be our new thing. # ZOFO.
ZOFO. Get in that zone of freaking out. It's not a bad thing. It's a sign you're doing something courageous.
You know what? Again, while you were off, I was kind of babbling on and on about some things. And I remember taking an exercise class one time, and the instructor said to me, if you don't feel the pain, you're not pushing hard enough. And so ZOFO, and I will never forget that, because I think about that in everything in life. There's gonna be some pain for some gain, right?
It can be a thrill, though, when you make an ask that feels in your ZOFO and you get it, you will there. And even just the act of standing up for an ask that feels big is over and over again. It feels scary when you think about it in the abstract. And then when you start to actually devise how you'll make it, it can be an absolute thrill to stand up for something that actually matters to you.
Well, that's for sure. And I don't know, does anyone have a question? And we've got maybe 5 more minutes because we started a little late today. Anybody want to ask Dia a question before we conclude?
Sure, I have access right in here in the chat. So if you have any questions for me, please shoot them to me. Teresa says, thanks, good stuff. I'm so glad, Teresa, that you found some of this at least fun, if not useful, as you think about the asks that matter to you, as you move towards your goals in this next period of time. So somebody's asking, so if you go into the ZO, which I'm assuming you're going to say zone of freaking out, the ZOFO, yeah? Is there a second half of that question?
So I think they want to know, how do you know if you're there?
Yeah. So yeah, how do you know you're there? You're gonna have that feeling. I think we said it earlier of like, oh my gosh. Oh, I see the other half of the question there. One of the questions I often get from folks is like, I want to ask for something. It feels Zopho-ish. How do I not know it's delusional? Because it can feel like, how dare I? Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Right. And it can be a small thing. I counseled a woman a couple of years ago after a conference talk I gave. And she was like going into a salary negotiation. She was in advertising and she was going to ask for something like, she was at a current salary at like 68,000 or something. And she was going to go in and she was going to ask for 72, but somehow 78 felt like an impossibility, So sometimes the difference between a Zopho and a non-Zopho number are not that big, but when you hit it, you're there. So, so the question here is, so if you go into the Zopho and then it get rejected, then what? Great. You're going to get something that is in the Zopho. The thing you're going to have to do is identify, because something in the Zopho for you has the perception that like this may get rejected. I may actually get a no here. So then what is, then you negotiate. Then you negotiate.
Yeah.
So walking into making that ask, that if you get a no at that number, if you get a no at that request for that stage, maybe, you're not going to be keynoting at that conference, you're going to be facilitating a panel. Well, if they don't want you to have you facilitate a panel, maybe you can be a host or a concierge, at one of the desks, and volunteer at the event so you can network your butt off at that event. So, what are those other beats that get you from the no that was in the Zopho down increments to a point where you can find something that is that perfect equilibrium between what you need and what they're willing to say yes to. Jackie says, what if you need to ask for something that you are not sure you're completely ready for? Do you still ask? Oh, what a beautiful question. This came up, this came up actually in a conversation I recorded for the podcast a couple of days ago, and it'll be released. I think it'll be episode 16, which is like, you go into a knife fight and you win. Then what? Now you're the one who wins knife fights. Am I ready for that? Am I ready for knowing for that? So I think that's a question that's very personal to you. And I would say for you to play out, if I get what I want, then what for me? What will I do? How will I help myself be successful to rise to the yes that I just got? So you're going to want to play out for yourself a little bit about, if I get what I want, then what? And this is not a small question, and sometimes can be the thing that holds us back, because when we get what we want, we have to level up how we see ourselves, especially when it's a considerable level up. So yes, that's a mindset piece, but it's also a strategy piece. What are you going to do if you get what you want? Great question. I don't have an answer. I just have that prompt back to you that you can workshop for yourself.
Well, you know what they say, fake it till you make it. I mean, you just go in there and you just do the best you can do, because you learn through your experiences. And that's what I say, Jackie, because if you get it, you were ready for it. There's a reason for it. So
and I have a different version of that. I don't love fake it till you make it, because it tells us we're faking it when we're not. We're actually friggin' doing it.
That's it.
You might be doing it and kind of unstable or not totally sure, on shaky ground, or kind of guessing or experimenting to see what works. But you know what? Give yourself some credit. You are doing it. So what if we rephrase fake it till you make it and into do it till you make it?
Do it till you make it. I like it. That is much better, because you're right. We're not really faking it, because we are doing it.
So we are doing it. It just feels not so sure, but look at you. You're actually doing it.
You're actually doing it. So I have to say that we really appreciate you coming on with us. And as usual, thank you for giving us the courage and empowering us to do the big ask.
I'm so thrilled. I'm so thrilled to be with you all today. And the questions that are still coming in are so beautiful. My ask is that you call the show and put these exact same questions right in a voicemail, and we will workshop it on the show for you and for your community and for the other folks, in the Women's Council of Realtors, to help level everyone up more courageously in the future.
Well, and it's Bondi. That's what it is. Just Bondi.
diabondi.com, and you can go to the Dia Bondi Show to
Woo.
find the podcast. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dia. We enjoyed our time. And as usual, you always give us something to think about. So thank you.
Love it. Thank you. Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Have a good, we'll see you
you.
tomorrow,
All
everybody.
right.
tomorrow.
See you soon.